I love doing the power rankings week in and week out because sometimes it gets really, really difficult. And this is a week I feel like I had a lot of movers and shakers. Only one new team inside of my power rankings, but a lot of movers and shakers inside of there as Drew does his dance. This is our top
That's me
10
moving and shaking.
top 10 power rankings for week 5. Before we get into it, though, I have 3 teams that just missed the cut, and that's going to be the Pittsburgh Steelers, who did just lose against the Dallas Cowboys, the Philadelphia Eagles, who did not play, so they were already just missing the cut. They didn't do anything to bounce inside that top 10. And our new number 11 spot is going to be the San Francisco 49ers, just missing just outside that top 10. So is anyone missing the cut for you before we get into it?
Based off of the mathematics here, I think I have the Buccaneers at 11 because the 49ers are still in.
Okay. Yeah.
And the reason for that is simply just going to be head-to-head matchups. If the 49ers played the Packers today, if the 49ers played the Commanders today, if the 49ers played the Falcons today, I'm taking the 49ers in all those games. They got 2 losses this year where they were up 10 in the fourth quarter and fumble-rooskied their ball away to losses against division opponents. And then they have a quality loss against the Vikings. So nothing that's happened in the first 5 weeks of the season has any bearing on what's going to happen to the playoffs. And they're going to get their players back and get healthy. And their quarterback is still balling out. So,
yeah, no, I agree with you there on that, on the latter. Who's your number 10 spot?
Welcome to the top 10 power rankings. The Atlanta Kirk Cousins are debuting in the top 10 for me.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. They're at my number 9 spot. They're the only new team for me as well. But they hit that number 9. I just wasn't comfortable with my 10 getting past them.
Yeah. My whole thing with that is it's your first time into the top 10. I can't put you any higher than 10.
Yeah. No, you said the same thing about the Commanders last week. So, at the very least, if anything, you're consistent.
Thank you.
Yeah, try to give out the compliments. That's as far as compliments I can go for you, though, Drew. So
don't worry, I get up every morning and compliment myself just enough. So,
my number 10 spot is the Green Bay Packers. I already mentioned my number 9 spot is the Atlanta Falcons. The Packers stay at that 10 spot for me back-to-back weeks. I probably could have had the Falcons at the 10 spot, but I think that the performance for Atlanta was more impressive than what Green Bay is put together against the Rams. You got your starting quarterback and you quarterback back, and you ended up losing last week's game against a good team, and then week 1 you lose as well against a team that's right outside of my top 10 in the power rankings, and then you beat the Rams. So only by 5. So I don't know how much stock I'm putting into it over the Falcons and what they've done so far up to this point, past couple of weeks. But I like the overtime win of what they did. And Kirk Cousins, ended up having 509 yards passing. So I let that sway me a little bit because Kirk looked good. So I put the Packers at my 10 spot and the Falcons at my 9 spot right now. Who's at your 9?
The 49ers.
Okay. Still inside that.
I had the Packers at 8.
Oh, okay. Okay. So you moved them up a little bit.
All the things you mentioned. Yeah, they got a dub.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I think my problem is when it comes to the Niners is I drop them outside of my top 10 is giving up that lead is obviously massive and it hurts a lot. And it's not the first time that you guys have given up a blown lead like that. And then obviously a blowout, excuse me, a blowout against the, not a blowout, but a loss against the Vikings as well, who's a very, very, very good team, very high in our power rankings. But again, your wins this year so far against the Jets and the Patriots, I'm not sure. Again, you're 11. You're sitting right outside of it. I still put a lot of stock inside the Niners. If we're talking about the Cowboys here against the exact same teams, again, I'm a pessimistic fan. I'm dropping. They haven't been in my just missed the cut or inside my top 10 since like week 1. So it just kind of shows you my opinion on them is not very high.
My whole thing with the Niners right now is that everybody's given Jordan Mason his flowers, but we have 2 running backs on the IR.
Yeah.
Jordan Mason's the 3rd string running back, and he's 2nd in the league in rushing. That's awesome.
Yeah.
But there's a reason why he's your 3rd string running back, because he's prone to fumbling the football. It's just like in the game against the Rams. Brock Purdy puts up a beautiful ball to Ronnie Bell, who's wide open, not wide open, but he's open for NFL terms, streaking down the sideline.
Right.
And he dropped the ball. He let it bounce off his chest. Well, he's our 6th wide receiver. Most of the time, he's not even active. The 49ers are losing football games right now because their best players are not playing. Well, yeah. That's why these power rankings are week to week, and we're not ranking the clear and obvious threats for the playoffs, because I'd have the 49ers a lot higher. So I couldn't take them out this week because there wasn't a team that I felt did enough to go in. I thought about putting the Cowboys back in, but they look so lethargic against the New York Giants. But I was like, okay, that's a Thursday night football game. They'll be fine. And then they looked bad again against the Steelers. And the Steelers have been good this year, but it took a game-winning heroic throw after almost having one of the greatest defensive players of all time going on that fumble by Rico Dowdle. But again, you got Rico, you got him handling the ball. And I know he had career high in carries and career high in total yards and all that stuff, but that dude's not a bell cow running back in the NFL.
Nope.
He's out of position in what they're asking him to do right now. So it was, I don't know. It's tough. If the 49ers barely beat the Seahawks this week, even though Seahawks have a good record, then they may not make my top 10 again. But I kind of expect, and I'm a pessimistic fan like you, I think we're going to house the Seahawks on Thursday. So we'll see.
My number 8 spot is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. You said you dropped the Bucs right outside your top 10, right?
Yeah. So you have the Bucs in, I have the Niners in. It seems like.
Yeah, so obviously I still, even with the loss, I still believe in the Bucs pretty highly. It's an overtime loss, and their losses come against, I think, a fluky game against Denver, which their Denver defense is playing pretty lights out, with a potential defensive player of the year over there at the corner position. And their defense is just strange. I don't know if you know anything about their defense so far this year. They're playing like the highest amount of cover 0. And like you got guys like Riley Moss and Pat Surtain just absolutely locking down the outsides. And then you have Sebastian Joseph Day and John Franklin Myers. Yeah, John Franklin Myers. And I'm forgetting the other guy who's actually Zach Franklin, I think. Zach Allen, I think is his name. But you got a couple guys on the defensive line who aren't supposed to be like making a massive impact, and they are making that impact. So their defense is super weird, but it's paying off again, playing the highest amount of cover 0 in there. But I like the wins that they've picked up against Washington and Detroit and Philly, and then a close loss, a divisional loss against Atlanta. So I still keep them inside of my top 10, and obviously a lot has to do with me believing in the Bucs and Baker Mayfield pretty highly still up to this point.
They got a big game this week. They got the Saints. So
yeah,
if they come out and put a showing on the Saints, that's going to move them to 4-2. And I think that division, it's a big week for them because Atlanta, I think, plays the Panthers. So
they're all the way up until the bye week, dude. They have a schedule where it's going to be prove it or lose it. They have division opponent New Orleans. They have Baltimore Monday Night Football. They have Atlanta again. They have Kansas City on Monday Night Football, and then they have the 49ers, and then they go into their bye week. They have a rough road ahead. If they can come out a couple of wins under their belt, they deserve in that top 10, but we might be genuinely looking at one of the last times that the Bucs are either in the top 10 or they move up the top 10 pretty significantly. So it sways one way or the other with the Bucs. I don't think there's an in-between right here. But then after that, they get a little bit of a break against the Giants, Carolina, Vegas, the Chargers, the Cowboys, Carolina, and then they go against New Orleans. I said a break. And then, New Orleans to end out their season. So go ahead with your next one. Wasn't sure if you're at your 8 or your 7.
Yes, Falcons, 49ers. I got the Packers at 8, which means the Washington Commanders are at number 7.
Same thing for me. They are also at my number 7.
Are they going to win the division?
At this point, looking at it, it looks like it. I would have to look at the rest of their schedule, but I mean, the way they're blowing out the teams and the way that Jaden's playing, I'm waiting for the, he looks like a rookie thing to kind of come around and bite him. It hasn't happened yet. Playing against Baltimore this week, we mentioned earlier, Carolina, Chicago, the Giants, Pittsburgh, and then Philly week 11. So outside of the Baltimore, you have a couple of games right there in a row where, I mean,
their last 4 weeks though, man, they go New Orleans, Philly, Atlanta, Dallas. That's yikesies.
And even with the defenses too, I mean, they play Chicago's defense, they play Pittsburgh's defense, and again, they play Baltimore as well. So the defenses, and Tennessee's had a pretty good defense as well. So at the very least, even if the offense isn't keeping up with some of these teams, the defenses that Jaden's having to play is still competitive. So again, they're at my number 7 as well. Again, I'm waiting for that other shoe to drop for Jaden finally look like a rookie. It hasn't happened yet.
I'm not. Baller.
I'm fine with it. I'm kind of waiting for it. If he continues, that's pretty awesome. At the number 6 spot, I have the Buffalo Bills, the same as Drew, I believe, right?
Yeah, I guess. Just spoil my whole damn list.
Go ahead and talk about the Bills.
Yeah, I'm not gonna. It was a big game. They played the Texans. I'm not too worried about what happened. We know the Texans are good. We know the Bills are good. If these teams played 10 times, they would probably each go 5-5. So it's just one of those things. I'm not going to harp against them too much for not taking the dub. The only thing I am slightly worried about with them is I think that the teams have kind of put a book out on the Bills right now, and I wouldn't be surprised to see the Bills dip into the trade market here to see if maybe they can add another piece on offense. They're just missing just a little bit, so they come in at 6 for me.
Who's your number 5?
The Texans.
Wow, Texans. Where were they at last week? 4?
5.
Okay, so they didn't move. Okay, they didn't move.
I had no movement after this. Everything stayed the same 1 through 6.
Okay. So my 1 and 2 didn't move, and my 3 is Houston. So I have
the Chiefs at 1. We agree there. I'm assuming they didn't lose. I have the Vikings at 2. Those London games are hella weird, and they got the dub. That's all that matters.
Yep.
I have the Lions at 3 still. I had them at 3 last week, and you had the Texans at 3.
Yep, and I had the Lions at 4, and then they stayed at 4. So,
and moving up to the 4th spot for me is the Ravens.
The Ravens are my 5 spot.
I think the Ravens are the most dangerous team in the NFL. There's not a team in the NFL that I would like. If you told me, okay, you're in the Super Bowl, who was the last team you want to play? Is the Ravens. I mean, the Chiefs are the Chiefs, obviously, but their offense looks so gutless right now. Yep. I'm not worried about the Vikings, even though they already beat us. That was cool, but it's Sam Darnold. Second on that list would be the Texans. I don't really want to see the Texans, but we already beat the Lions, so I'm not, obviously they could beat us also. But right now, the team that really strikes fear in me, and I just don't see a way to slow them down unless you're the Raiders, is the Ravens.
Yeah. Baltimore, I think, was around my 8 spot last week, if I remember correctly. And so they moved up to the 5. The only reason they don't move up
that's a big boy jump.
They don't move up past that is because the Lions didn't play. I don't feel like you could drop any spots or gain any spots if you don't play, especially if I don't have any questions about you before that. And then so Texans, Vikings, Chiefs all stay the same for me as well. So that 4 through 1 stay the same. Baltimore can't penetrate any past that because the Lions are kind of holding strong at that 4th spot, not playing a game. But it's a big week for a couple of our teams, right? I mean, we're looking, Lee already mentioned it, the Ravens versus Commanders. Could be looking at a potential move around for them. If the Commanders end up winning that game, and depending if they win, they're moving up. But depending how much they win and depending how they play, it depends on how much they move up. Because that makes them legitimate in my eyes.
Are you predicting the Washington Commanders to beat the Baltimore Ravens?
I don't know. I feel like we might have to talk about that a little bit later for the upset of the week.
Okay. Seems suspicious.
But I think that's it for our top 5, right? I mean, we don't really have to talk about the rest of the guys. I mean, Texans, we're going to talk about a little bit later on how much we're concerned about how they're winning a little bit later on. The Vikings, you already talked about. They pulled out a win at the end of the day in London, so not concerned about them. They still hold strong that 2 spot, and the Chiefs haven't lost, so they can't move down. If the Chiefs lost tonight, Vikings move up at the end of the day. But So the rest of that stays strong. Anything else on those power rankings before we move on to our other headlines?
No, there's a couple big games this week that could have some potential movement. As you mentioned, Detroit's playing Dallas. If Dallas beats Detroit,
Yeah, they can jump back in.
They could jump back in. Obviously the aforementioned Washington Baltimore game. We got the division game with the Bucks and the New Orleans Saints. Yep. We got a division game with the Seattle Seahawks and the 49ers. If the Seahawks come out and just smash the 49ers, maybe they're trying to crawl back in. So going to be an interesting week for the top 10 rankings.
Yeah, and I'll throw another one in there. Arizona and Green Bay. I don't think you mentioned, but that one as well. If Arizona can pull out a win, I think it gives credence to maybe them either just missing the cut or sneaking it.
Yeah, their offense has been awful.
Yeah.
The Cardinals, Kyler Murray's like 170 yards a game. Like, I don't even know how we lost that game. Besides that fumble, it's just the stupidity of it. I just couldn't even. And I'm sitting there crying myself. I'm by myself on Sunday watching this football game that I'm supposed to be enjoying with a dear friend of mine who didn't show up. And I'm just like, this is an awful football game. Dallas looks terrible. Like, I'm tired of watching terrible football. Like,
right.
And then you guys won, so I can't even talk crap. Like, my team lost and your team won. I hate when that happens. I get enough of that during the basketball season.